Aloha everyone and welcome to another Tinker's Academy video. I'm your host Kay Elmer, and in this video let's talk about biohacking body odor. Now I know what you're thinking. That's a very odd topic. Why would we even cover that in a video? What's there to learn? Well, you know what? This is why you should care. Did you know that your sense of smell is a superpower? Yeah, when I was doing some research on this, and it all started with a science paper I read, and I'll get into that in a little while about nonanol, that's how you pronounce it, smell, which is this smell of old people. And scientists found out it's actually a real thing. So anyway, I discovered that, hey, I'm a biohacker, I'm a tinker, I'm aging, and the last thing I want to smell is that smell, which nobody likes, and grandma, grandpa, and nursing homes, and it's just this stanky smell, and I'm just like, oh my God, I got the major ick from it, and I didn't want to smell like that. So hey, I did some research, and I'm sharing it with you. But one of the interesting things I discovered was that our sense of smell is literally a superpower. And what I mean by that is when you take a look at the five physical senses, vision, hearing, smell, taste, touch, right? And you look at each one of these things, and the science is pretty clear on it. The vision, the light spectrum is huge, but humans can only detect light in a very narrow band of the light spectrum. Same thing with hearing. Hearing, the sound, frequencies, 0 to cajillion hertz of sound, and human hearing is only a little tiny band of the different frequencies that we can literally pick up and hear. And even as we get older, that band narrows, and we can hear less and less frequencies around us and sounds, So we have a very narrow perception, this is my point, of what we can hear and what we can see and the way we taste and touch, and all of these things start to fade and things like that, but it's limited. But what's interesting is that your sense of smell is not. In fact, it is your superpower. And one of the things about conventional knowledge is that, and for the longest time, the science community thought that we couldn't really smell more than 10,000 different odors. But what was interesting is that Rutgers University did a study in 2017 called The Human Sense of Smell. It's stronger than we think. And what they came out with is that humans can discriminate maybe 1 trillion different odors, right? Which is far more than claimed by the folk wisdom and poorly sourced introductory psychology textbooks. And this study insists from their results that the human beings can smell up to 1 trillion, if not more. They ran out of numbers to be able to calculate how many different odors a human being can pick up. And why am I telling you this on a video about biohacking body odor? Well, this is my point, is for whatever reason, whether you subscribe to intelligent design or simulation theory, or you're just an agnostic or whatever, but there's some reason that our physical bodies were given this superpower, and it's a superpower of smell, which implies to me, and I'm just making an assumption here, that odors play a significant role in our world, in our lives. And when you look at the concept of biohacking, and biohacking simply means somebody who's very much attuned, right, to health, healing, longevity, and physical performance, cognitive performance, athletic performance. But these are biohackers, typically are your health oriented individuals who are really taking it seriously, much more than the normies around us, right? And for someone who's that much interested into health, and the interesting thing is if you go on YouTube, no one's done a video about biohacking body odor. I mean, I did find one that Dave Asprey, he did a short on it, and he just talked about what you eat. But that's such a superficial level of information regarding, like, hey, really, what is body odor? How important is it to our health and, just in our overall performance and our healing and all of that? And so that's kind of what I started going down this rabbit hole. And so this is kind of where I wanted to share it with you. First things first, I just want to point out that showering and using deodorant is just masking. You're not really dealing with the actual cause of the body odor, right? Which is driven by 3 key factors. And if you really want to work on that, and that is a factor of your health, you can't, this is my opinion. I don't think any one of us who's health conscious can really discount the concept of body odor. If you don't take that into account as to one of your things that's on your list of things to worry about, and that's not necessarily worry about, but focus on, I guess is a better phrase. But biohackers are talking about autophagy and senolytics, and they're looking at saunas and hyperbaric oxygen chambers and all this stuff that we do, right? But nobody talks about body odor. So that's what this video is all about. So first things first, what causes body odor? Way beyond the superficial aspect of what we eat. And according to the American Society of Microbiology, in an article, or actually a paper they wrote, published in December 30, 2021, called Microbial Origins of Body Odor. Well, it kind of came down, in that article, it came down to two specific things from a microbiology, the sciences, the scientists that study this stuff. And they really identified the source of smell that are emanating from our bodies is coming from key bacteria and key volatile fatty acids. And so, just to give you an example from the article, it's quite a lengthy article, it kind of summarized right here, but if you've got smelly feet, which is what they consider, they called it the cheesy smelling odor, that's called by Staphylococcus. And it's a bacteria called Staphylococcus epidermis. And then what that bacteria does is it degrades the leucine in your sweat to create an isovaleric acid, and that's just how they talk, right? But you think about that. It's just right off the bat, when you look at fish-like body odor is created by that bacteria, musty body odor, if you have a musty odor, you have this bacteria living on your skin. And there's actually a bacteria that causes people to smell like boiled cabbage. But the idea here, though, is, and you hear this a lot, and in biohacking, the whole mind-gut connection, right? The importance of your healthy gut microbiome. There's entire conferences that all they talk about is a healthy gut microbiome. Well, where are the people who are talking about a healthy skin microbiome? And that's what we're talking about here. It's like you literally have up to, last paper I read was we have up to 3 to 6 pounds of bacteria that live with us. Every one of us, every adult human being has up to 3 to 6 pounds of our body weight consists of these little tiny creatures that live with us and on us as symbiotic relationships that we have with these critters. And they're part of our overall, we are an environment. We're not just, a person. We are an environment, a symbiotic organism that has all this stuff growing on us and in us, living with us, and we have this symbiotic relationship that's been developed over eons. So the idea here that I'm trying to convey is that there is a very critical role of bacteria as it relates to body odor, and how important it is that you focus or have a focus on your skin microbiome. And there's also an oral microbiome, what's going on in your mouth. And of course, as I mentioned, the key one that everyone focuses in on is your gut microbiome. But this video, we're talking about your skin microbiome. So if you've got some cheesy smelling feet, or someone who has they've got an issue with a bacteria that's living, their microbiome on their skin has this bacteria. Now, the other thing too about the key volatile fatty acids were, the folks that wrote the paper discovered that, hey, there's if it's a goat-like odor, and I personally have never ever lived with a goat. I'm not sure what goats smell like. I live with dogs, and they have their own little smell. And, the puppies smell different than the adults and all that. But there's a goat-like odor that's caused by a fatty acid called 3-methyl-2-hexanic acid, 3M2H, and then there's a cumin-like odor caused by another fatty acid. And then rotten onions or rotten meat is actually a fatty acid called 3-methyl-3-sulfohexane 1-ol. I guess that's how you pronounce it. But then this one I mentioned earlier, this old people smell, it's also known as nursing home smell. That's actually been isolated down to an unsaturated aldehyde, and it's pronounced, or it's a fatty acid called 2-nonanol. That's how you pronounce it. And so that is the origin of smells that are coming off of us, are bacteria and also from fatty acids. And so now that we've identified, hey, what's causing our body odor, and then of course the severity of the body odor, because we all have different ranges of body odor. And how do you biohack that? How do you go, wait a minute, I need to take better care of my skin microbiome and these fatty acids? Like, what's the deal with that? Obviously I don't want to smell like rotten onions. And so how do I deal with these fatty acids that are causing these odors coming off of me, as opposed to just trying to mask it all the time? And so there's this other point, though, before I jump into the how-to part, which is body odor and diseases. And this is, I think, the most important part about biohacking for health as it relates to body odor, is that, you could literally have a disease. Either it's identified, i.e. diagnosed, or not diagnosed. But what's interesting is that per the Cleveland Clinic, they wrote a paper about body odor and diseases, where they identified that several medical conditions and diseases are associated with changes in a person's usual body scent. So not only could your body odor be driven by, let's say what you eat, obviously. If you've ever been around a bunch of Koreans, you know what I'm talking about. Nothing about you Koreans. I love you guys, but you all smell like garlic. Anyway, but the idea here is that, you've got your skin microbiome, you've got these fatty acids that are causing odors, and then you've also could possibly have a condition that's putting out an odor. And now the Cleveland Clinic was able to identify very specific odors that are diseases that cause specific odors, and that it includes diabetes and gout. If you're going through menopause, overactive thyroid, liver disease, kidney disease, infectious diseases, and Parkinson's are able to be identified by the particular odor. And so that's how important, if you're going to biohack odors, and you might need to think about, hey, you know what, if I'm working on odors and I might have, and you might have one of these types of things, and that's putting out another different odor. And so fixing that problem obviously resolves the odor. But the interesting part here is that there's the concept of how do you detect all of that? And so this is where it comes up in the whole field of medical detection dogs. Now there's this entire, field of people and scientists that are working with dogs, and they've trained them to identify all of these different types of diseases, and they're using them for diagnostics. But here's the thing. I read several articles on medical detection dogs. It's a real thing. They're trained to do these things, and the problem is that it competes with all the money that big pharma makes with all the diagnostic testing. Instead of just bringing in a dog and sniffing the patient, and then the dog will tell you, hey, what this person has. That's how it works. But the whole idea though is that so there's a medical community of what I call awakened allopaths that are out there looking for what's actually working best, and don't subject your patient to all of these tests, and then of course all the money that these things cost. But just having a dog, so there's a group of people that group of doctors, allopaths, that want to use these dogs, and of course there's the medical establishment that says no, that's just that's crazy. So so it's kind of it's a fringe kind of thing. But right now there really are such a thing as medical detection dogs, and there really are doctors out there using it. But what's more interesting, and of course we all know dogs have a sense of smell that's way greater than humans, and humans, as you know, it's your superpower. But what's interesting is that there's actually a hereditary condition that humans could have, and this is the amazing story of a lady named Joy Milne, who lives in Perth, Scotland. And this lady's, short story is, she's just a regular lady. She's a retired nurse. And then one day, her older husband and her, she started smelling something. And if you know women, if they have this weird smell in their house, they're going to track it down like Sherlock Holmes. And she just went through every possible thing trying to find out what the hell that smell was. And she finally narrowed it down to her husband. And then she just tried to basically harass the hell out of this poor old guy, like, you smell and you have this weird smell. And she finally harassed him enough to drag his ass to the hospital. And it was what they discovered was, after some testing that they did on this guy, trying to figure out what the smell was, because she kept insisting that he had this weird smell that he didn't have in their entire marriage prior, and that he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And so now what was interesting is that the University of Edinburgh in Scotland got wind of this lady and this issue with her husband, and they decided to test Mrs. Milne. And they discovered that she had something called hereditary hyperosmia. And what that that particular genetic, I guess, abnormality, I'll call it a gift, was she has the ability to sniff it out. And so they tested her. They tested her with, just basically ran different experiments on her with people who were, they had people who with and without Parkinson's. They wore a T-shirt for a whole day. Then they gave them, they gave her the T-shirts to smell, and she identified 100% of the time with absolute accuracy the people's T-shirts who had Parkinson's and the ones who didn't. She could say yes or no, and she actually identified somebody who didn't have it, and she said, yeah, he's got it, and they retested him, and he had it. And so this is an actual real thing. People and dogs, or certain people, have the ability to smell the odors coming off of diseases, which is the key issue here about body odor, is that it could be driven by disease as well. And that's something to be really, really aware of. So in the world of like, hey, so how do you biohack body odor? Okay. Well, first thing is you got to overcome your programming. And what I mean by that simply is that, when I took a look at all of the material about body odor, overarching, message was everybody is so, especially in the Western world, right? And I live in the Western world myself. We're just so programmed to think that body odor is just this horrible, social, problem and, or issue, and the people who smell are like gross, and, and it's just like, hey, but you know what? Hundreds of years ago, nobody even cared about that. So what is that issue here about programming? And so, it's interesting, the National Geographic wrote an article called "Why Did Body Odor Start Grossing Us Out?" They, and actually just this article came out in the National Geographic, June of 2024, just this year. And the thing that, they did their research and they wrote this article, it's the National Geographic. And they basically concluded, hey, back in the 18th and 19th century, bathing became more common back then. Prior to that, it just wasn't a thing, except for maybe the Asians, right? And basically, it started to, this change in social behavior started forging a new association between body odor and negative things like poverty and disease. As the more educated people in the upper class began to wash, they became aware that the working classes and their servants smelled. So what really happened back then, and this is what's programmed all of us since then, is that bathing and body care became a way for the elite to reinforce their status. It became bourgeois to smell nice or to be clean, or actually not be clean, to not have body odor. And so if you were bourgeois, right, and somebody had any little whiff of a body odor, they were considered low class. And so everybody in the low class didn't want to be low class. And so they took on this mindset that, to smell is bad, and I don't want to be low class. I want to smell like high class. And that's kind of that programming that we've all kind of suffered from ever since then. And of course, you've got entrepreneurs and profiteers, and they're going to just capitalize in on this social, thing, the social structure about body odor. But my point here is to overcome your programming. There is nothing wrong. And you are not low class. I am not low class. None of us are low class, and we're not the bourgeois, aristocrats. Just because we smell like a human being. And that's the point. We all smell. We are human beings, and we will smell like human beings, just like my dog smells like a dog. There's nothing wrong with that, and we've been programmed to think that there is something wrong with that, and that's where it leads to the next bullet, is we mask it. That's what we've been trained by all the commercials and all the marketing, and even, and everybody around us is like, oh, you have to put on deodorant, you have to put on colognes and perfumes and all this crap. And we've been masking our own natural smell. That's natural. And that we need to stop thinking that it's not natural. Stop thinking that it's a bad thing, because it just is a thing. And more importantly, we need to stop masking. And there's a huge reason why. Get to that in a second. But I think that when we take an actual look and say, well, it's about severity, right? We all have a natural smell. Okay. But if you have something that goes beyond natural smell, like it's really offensive to yourself, then then you need to start looking at, how do I hack that? How do I biohack my body odor if it's a little more, if it's more than just, quote, my normal human smell. And let's talk about what that means definition wise. But the idea though is, hey, if you want to biohack your body odor beyond just what you would consider nominal stank, then hey, we need to look at the skin microbiome. We need to look at our toxic load, and we need to look at reducing our oxidative stress. And here's why. So let's just start off with this. Now, we go back to that article, Microbial Origins of Body Odor by the American Society of Microbiology, December 2021. Now, in that article, there's a section called Deodorizing Body Odor. So when we talk about masking, this is the problem with masking. And this is why I don't, and I'm gonna just go public, I don't use deodorants, colognes, nothing. I don't put anything on my skin. I just wash soap and water, okay? Because what they were saying at the American Society of Microbiology is that deodorants contain chemicals that kill skin flora and block production of stinky byproducts, okay? So in other words, they kill off all the bacteria. But just like your gut microbiome, you've got friendly bacteria and you've got very unfriendly bacteria. And so this is like taking antibiotics, right? And so if you know anything about your gut microbiome, if you destroy your gut microbiome with antibiotics, you're killing your good bacteria, your friends, and you're killing your enemies. And you don't want to be killing your friends, okay? So the idea here is that antiperspirants reduce the amount of sweat clogged by clogging. That's what they do. But you know what? You don't want to clog your sweat glands. That's your body's natural way to detox. And then also, many contain aluminum chloride, which creates a gel-like substance that forms a plug at your sweat ducts in your skin. Now, many deodorants and antiperspirants also contain antimicrobials like propylene glycol, triclosan, and benzalkonium chloride, which decreases the bacterial abundance and result in an altered skin microbiome in the armpits. So what are these? These are some pretty harsh chemicals that you're putting on your skin. You're plugging up your lymphatic systems. You're blocking your body's ability to detox. And that is simply not good. So it's like, that's why I'm anti-deodorant, antiperspirant. It's just because I don't want to do that to my skin. I want to work with my skin microbiome, just like I work with my gut microbiome. I want to help my friendlies flourish. And I want to do everything I can to kind of, help my body be as natural and healthy as possible. But what's interesting is that they also went on to say in the article that while deodorants and antiperspirants do the minimum job of reducing bacterial load and their byproducts, respectively, a growing body of work is focusing on the use of probiotics and artificial microbial communities to reduce malodor. So, that's pretty interesting. So is there such a thing as a probiotic, just like you would take for your gut, but is there one for your skin microbiome? The answer is yes, of course, because that's in you're doing the video. Hey, you know what? Did you know that there was a scientist and he didn't shower for 15 years to prove his point? and by the way, that's serious dedication to your work. And this guy's name is David Whitlock. Sorry. He's a chemical engineer living in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He actually went on to form a chemical or like a pharmaceutical company called Biome. Okay, and the product line is called Mother Dirt. Now, David Whitlock, as a chemical engineer, basically was just, for whatever reason, he just really became interested in microbiome friendly and probiotic products for skin, because he got his inspiration, watching horses roll in dirt, as that's their way of bathing. Okay, so now Whitlock hoped that he would be able to naturally replicate the animal's way of bathing and maintaining their healthy skin, their fur or hair or whatever, by using the same concept of using the bacteria in the soil that horses do, and chinchillas also do the same. And several animals also do the same. They'll rub themselves in the dirt. My dogs rub themselves in the dirt all the time. And so that really interested him as a concept for how they maintain their skin microbiome, and could that apply to humans. So what he did was he actually went out and harvested bacteria from the soil at local farms and fed them with ammonia and minerals, and he just started cultivating different cultures of bacteria from the soil that the animals were using. And then he would then turn those, then when they turned the ammonia into nitrates, then he knew he had what he wanted, and he started narrowing them down to a single strain. So after lots of experimenting, trying to find the right bacterial strain that seemed the happiest on human skin, that was, that worked really well for human skin. And so then he discovered this thing. He called it AO Mist. It's a bacterial strain. And after he applied the bacteria on himself that he had cultured, the same stuff that the horses were using, he stopped smelling. So as an experiment, he kept that up for 15 years. He did not take a shower, and all he would do is he would just replenish the healthy bacteria onto his skin, and that healthy bacteria basically, in his, this is his testimony, he stopped smelling. Okay, and it just took care of his body odor because he was working with his natural skin microbiome using a probiotic he had created. So so here's some evidence, and of course there's all that stuff on his website. You can look it up. So I decided back during the pandemic days, and this is something I decided, I'm a tinker, and I wanted to know, hey, is this going to work? So actually, we, as many of you did, we got sent home, right? They closed the office, told us all to go work from home. So I figured, hey, I don't have to go to the office anymore. I don't got to get up at 8 o'clock, shower every day. I can get up at 7:55, roll over, jump onto my desk, and log into Zoom, which a lot of you guys working from home do. So, I don't have to do that whole freaking hour prep, And I'm thinking, hey, well, this is, great opportunity to try this tink. So I decided to start tinkering with it. And so I decided, hey, I'm going to give it a try. So this is my experience here. Can you modify your body odor, or can you reduce yourself to like just naturals? Can you manage your body odor? This is the key. Biohack your body odor with a skin microbiome probiotic. The answer is yes. David Whitlock did it, and I did it. So now what I did was, this is my test. So back in the pandemic days, where I did for 3 months, I decided that, hey, you know what? I'm going to give this a try, and I did not take a shower for 3 months. And so this is my story. First of all, I acquired the Mother Dirt product called AO Mist. And I just want to say that, for whatever reason, they discontinued this product in 2022. Don't know why. But there are other skin probiotics on the market if you just search for them. And you could probably try other different strains and things like that if you want to repeat the experiment and you're as crazy as I am. But basically back then, though, I did buy the Mother Dirt AO Mist, and I just followed the directions. And then I just stopped showering. And instead of showering, I used a probiotic on my skin to see what the effect would be. And I wanted to see if David Whitlock, what basically he said, he stopped smelling. I wanted to see if he was telling the truth. I tried it for myself. And what I found out is that by week 2 to 4, so somewhere in there, in my experiment, I reached what I would consider peak stank. It's back then, I was living in Hawaii, right, and going to the dog parks and taking my dogs for walks in the heat every day, right? And it was like, okay, this is my discovery was, you don't stop smelling. It takes a while. That was my first observation. You're applying a probiotic mist to yourself, your stinky parts, and you don't stop smelling. It just gets stinkier and stinkier and stinkier, and you reach this peak stank. And this is when the Norman coefficient kicked in. This is my dog Norman. This is my little man. I love this guy more than anything. And so him and I were back in the pandemic, and we're living together. Kid went off to college, just the two of us. I don't think I could have done this if I had a spouse. I don't think the spouse would allow me to have done this experiment. But it's just the dog and I. And so the Norman coefficient, and this is the aspect of the experiment that I gave this term to, was that Norman and I would sleep on our queen-size bed. And Norman, up until this point, I've had him for 9 years now. So back then, I'd had him for several years. And so Norman sleeps right here. This is a diagram of Kay Elmer sleeping in his bed with Norman, and so Norman would always sleep right here. And so I'd reach out and I'd pet him, and he'd just sleep right next to me. For years he'd sleep with me, and then but what I discovered that the Norman coefficient on the experiment was Norman, after about 3 weeks, decided he was not going to. Whoops. He was not going to sleep there anymore. He decided that he was going to sleep down here at the bottom of my bed. And so he would not, no matter how much I coaxed him to sleep where, like sleep next to me, I'd kind of, keep my hand on him at night. And he would just be like, nope, I'm not doing it. And I'm not going to sleep next to you. And so for like several weeks, Norman would only sleep down here at the foot of the bed, and he would not sleep next to me. And so that's when I started to think maybe the experiment was not going very well. And Whitlock was, full of BS because when your own dog rejects you, you've got to, you have to do some self-contemplation on how bad you smell. So, but bottom line though is I wanted to stick with the experiment. And so irregardless of my dog now rejecting me and would not sleep with me because I smelled so bad, I decided to keep going. And so what I did though was I decided, okay, well, even though the instructions for using it weren't very clear about exactly what you should do, around that same period of time when I had reached peak Norman coefficient where he stopped sleeping next to me, I decided maybe I should just use some water and a washcloth and just do a little bit, of cleaning up. And I did that. And then I reapplied the AO mist. And so after I did that, I discovered that, the smell had peaked and that it started to go down to what I would consider what I'm calling nominal stank. And at that point, about, the month two, like 2 weeks after or so like that, and yeah, I really started kicking in, that the actual probiotic on my skin started kicking in. I wasn't as bad, and then the Norman, this is all measured by the Norman coefficient. The Norman started sleeping next to me again. So by month 2, Norman was right back to where he normally would sleep with me, right next to me, and then nothing changed after that. So if you have a Norman, you can definitely do this and repeat this experiment. But the funny part was when the dog rejects you, that's when you've reached peak. And then, when he comes back to you, then that's starting to work. So I did it for 3 months, and like I said, the rest of the experiment after 3 months, Norman was like totally normal, sleep right next to me. And then my own interpretation of my smell was that I had reached this kind of like this equilibrium. And I know that it's really hard for all of us to judge our own smells. Everybody's like that. I mean, people that fart and all that stuff. But the whole idea is that, it was that I did have another being in my home kind of, weighing in on my experiment. So I just wanted to point that out, that this wasn't just an objective measurement of my own opinion. I had another being in there judging me. But the idea here was that, I discovered in my experiment that your stink will continue to go up if you use, water and a washcloth and then reapply the probiotic, and you do that every week. Then eventually the probiotic kicks in and it brings you down to this nominal stank level where you're just you smell like a human, and you just, and it just tailors off and it just remains consistent for months. And so that was it. And now, why did I only go 3 months and not, all these years? There's a drawback to not showering, I discovered, and this is what Whitlock never did mention in any of his work, was that there's a drawback to not showering, and I discovered it was exfoliating. And so you end up with this, and I'm just going to be honest, it's TMI, I know, but you end up with a crust of skin that doesn't get washed off, okay? And so even though your odor is being taken care of, your skin accumulation becomes very uncomfortable. So I went back to, showering regularly, but not as often. And ever since then, I haven't had to reapply the AO mist. I don't shower daily like I used to when I was in the office. And it's usually kind of weekly now. And I maintain a nominal stank, by my standards and of course Norman standards. So there you go. That was an interesting experiment. You guys should give it a try. Let me know how it goes for you. Now, the other piece of information I want to really share. Now, this is Charlotte Gerson. I don't know if those of you guys who know I think her father's name was Max Gerson, the Gerson Miracle. She runs multiple Gerson clinics. She's a much older lady, I think in her late 80s. She's spent her entire life as a naturopath, helping people cure from all sorts of different diseases through a natural means that her father had created, the Gerson method. And so this lady is a lifelong health person and healer. And so in a recent lecture, she actually was talking about the hidden dangers of body odor. And so I just wanted to play this with you, and let's talk about what she has to say.
Why do you smell bad? Perspiration does not smell unless you're toxic. So you say, well, that's not sociable. It's not admissible. I can't go out in the world like this. I got to stop this. So what are you really doing? The body's last desperate attempt to get rid of toxins through perspiration. What is the normal way of detoxifying? Through the liver and the feces, through the kidneys and the urine, breathing out carbon dioxide and so on. But when everything is blocked and the liver is overloaded and the kidneys are overloaded and the body tries to get rid of things through perspiration, you say, oh, nobody, you can't do that to me. It's not sociable. And you block it. You stop it. So what are you doing? You're pushing these toxins right back into the lymphatics, right back into the breast. Then you're surprised there's breast cancer. It's a contributing factor. I'm not saying it's the only thing. In men, it's a different story. Breast cancer in men is rapidly increasing. It's now 1% of female. And in men, it's particularly aggressive. You can't use ointments or creams or minerals or anything underarm except a little soap and water or maybe a little vinegar water. And then you say, yes, but I smell. What's my answer? Eat right and you won't smell.
Well, to all credit to, Charlotte Gerson, it's not just about eating, and, she should know that, but, this is just a clip. But the idea here is she's right. Your lymphatic system is what you need to detox, as I had already mentioned. So step 2 in biohacking body odor is you've got to absolutely decrease your toxic load. And how you do that is very problematic, okay? Because it takes a lot of effort. And I did this over 15 years ago, when I started my journey in tinkering and biohacking and wanting to just, change my life. Was that one of the first things I did was, threw out my microwave and all this stuff. But one of those things was I went through my house, and anything that touched our skin, my daughter was young at the time, but anything that touched us or that we would smell, right, that we would ingest in our mouths, through our nose, or, or through our skin, I got rid of. And I replaced with the natural, organic, non-GMO version of it. So all of the household products that were just incredibly toxic, out the door, replaced with natural stuff. Sundries, the same thing. Our soaps and our shampoos. I even put filters, like chloride, chlorine filters on the showers and all of that stuff. And then in terms of my daughter being female and her wanting to get into cosmetics, I had to spend big bucks on the healthy stuff and not allow her to do what most women do, which is very unfortunate. Ladies, if you haven't looked up the research on that, by the time you're 30, if you're an active person who uses cosmetics, you have absorbed at least 3 pounds of lead by the time you're 30, through your face. And so, cosmetics are one of the most toxic ingredients you could put on your skin. Your household products, your cleaning products, your laundry soap literally is the number one problematic toxic chemical in your house, is laundry soap. Making sure you're using natural soaps, and of course all the sundries, toothpastes and deodorants and all that stuff, right? If you're using it, it's got to be where you have an eye on what's going on. You've got to stop poisoning yourself with all these toxins, right? And that affects your body odor. And then at the same time, you've got to learn how to detox, and get it, because no matter what, you're still going to absorb it. You're going to absorb it just driving down the road, and all the fumes coming off all the cars. You're bringing that in. You're constantly intaking toxins. So the more you can do at home, right, the lower your exposure. And then secondly, you've really got to focus in on detoxing. So stop masking, stop plugging up your skin, allow your lymphatic system to basically get rid of it. And if you have a body odor problem, and like as Charlotte Gerson just explained, it's because you've reached that toxic load and your body can't handle it anymore, and it starts to excrete through your skin. So if it's excreting through your skin, you've got issues you really need to deal with. And so if you decrease your toxic load, you do some detox for toxins specifically, you're going to see a way, it is the way to biohack your body odor and decrease yourself down to a nominal stank. Okay?
I do smell bad.
And so the last one here is the antioxidants. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, the Society of Integrated Dermatology in a 2001 paper put out a report that's basically titled 2-nonenal newly found in human body odor tends to increase with aging. And so bottom line, it was a paper that proved the existence of old people smell. And they basically concluded through their experiments and their study that the fatty acid smell was the result of oxidation, which is basically your rancidity. Meaning that, okay, and this is what this paper proved and this experiment proved, was that smell, old people's smell, is the result of the fat tissues in their bodies going rancid due to oxidation, which is caused by, free radicals. Okay, let me say that again, that old people have that weird smell because their bodies are going rancid. Now try to imagine basically it's the fast lane highway to death is to take where your body starts to be, your body's basically mutating your fat cells into rancid acids, rancid oils. And you're living with all this rancidity. And the idea here is that, hey, your immune system is working overtime on all the other crap going on in your world, and now your own body is poisoning itself because you literally are going rancid, and you're off-gassing all of that rancid smell that's being interpreted as old people smell, or the fatty acid 2-nonenal. And that's really it. And when I read this paper, I was like, whoa. Again, I do not want to smell like an old person. I hate that smell. Nothing against old people here, but I just don't like that smell. And I am, nearing old age, I guess. I don't want to smell. And yeah, I need to overcome my programming, but I don't want to smell like that. So one of the most important things you could do, your third step in biohacking your body odors, you've got to be just chugging antioxidants. And the older you get, right? This paper concludes that it is a factor of aging. So the older you get, you should be really ramping up your intake of antioxidants. And so when you look at the most popular antioxidants, and these are part of my daily supplements, is vitamin C, coenzyme Q10. I take was it ubiquinol? Is a version of that. I take a full spectrum vitamin E. I take glutathione with L-lipoic acid to activate the glutathione. I also do molecular hydrogen. I do that as well. But my favorite is, and then as you all know, is I've been taking carbon 60 for like 7 years now, and I continue and will plan on forever taking these super antioxidants to constantly be scavenging all of that oxidation stuff in my body. It also is my way of detoxing, by the way. Antioxidants are electron donors. They will go after the toxins, right? So you've got a two birds, one stone. It'll knock out the toxins and detox you from a toxin standpoint. And it also manages your oxidative stress. So if you're really adamant about not wanting to have a strong body odor as you age, which is indicative of the quality of your health, then you really need to pay attention to a really, really high intake of antioxidants. And that's why I take all of these different antioxidants, because it does that. It does two of those things. That's really the key point here. It'll help you detox the toxins, and it'll also help you oxidize, those free radicals, so that you don't have your fat cells in your body going rancid on you. Okay, and that all ties into what? Body odor. So that's it, guys. That's how you biohack body odor. Really, really need to pay attention again to your skin microbiome. Try a probiotic for your skin. If you're taking one for your gut, why aren't you taking one for your skin, right? Really look at what your toxic load is. Make sure you're detoxing and reducing intake. And number 3, again, you should be taking a buttload of antioxidants to stave off all of those issues that oxidation creates, which one of them is body odor. All right, so there you go. Hey, thanks for watching. Hope you found this content interesting. I just wanted to share the research that I was doing and just kind of like what I'm doing. And just as an FYI, the one piece of this that I haven't done yet for myself, and I'm really looking into it now, is doing saunas, because saunas is really critical in stimulating your skin, your lymphatic system, into basically, working and keeping the pipes open and so forth. So I'm looking into that. That's my last little step, because I do all of these things. I do all three things to manage my body odor. And as I mentioned, I reached a point where if I'm wearing clean clothes, I'm perfectly fine to go out in public. And I have a daughter, and I do ask her, hey, I do ask her, hey, how do I smell? And she's like, you smell fine. So I know that what I'm doing works well. I have a dog that will now sleep with me, and I have a human that tells me I'm okay, so that I know, hey, what I'm doing is working. And so that's kind of how I'm biohacking my body odor, which is biohacking my health. So anyway, if you found this content interesting, I appreciate it if you like and subscribe. You can find more about me at the Tinkers Academy video in the description. Link in the video description below. And I also have a health and healing Telegram chat group. I'll put a link for that as well. If you're interested in this kind of topic, you have questions, you want to engage with other people, there's 600 plus people in there, and we're just talking about everything you can imagine about natural, homeopathic, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic, any possible way other than the medical mafia's way to stay healthy, to heal, and to go and to extend your life, okay, and live happy and healthy and all that fun stuff. And that's where you would want to go if you want to chat with people like-minded. Otherwise, hey, thanks for watching. Really hope you found this educational and interesting, and have a great day. Aloha.